Hey everyone, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Sask Sports Show, brought to you by Amateur Sports TV. I'm your host, JD Haughton. Tonight, I'm going to dive into the career of a man who is the voice of the Saskatoon Blades for over 25 years. The hey ho, let's go, man. Les Lazaruk. How are you doing tonight, Les? Thanks for being on the show.
I'm good, JD. I've never been quite introduced like that, but I like it. It's goal number one when the Blades score, so I guess it's a way of getting us started.
And I figured I would switch it up a little bit. I know that's your trademark saying, and I guess my first question is how did that come about? You saying that after every Blade goal?
Well, it's not after every Blade goal. It's after every first goal of a game that the Blades
Oh,
score.
okay.
So there's a different one. And again, these things come by happy accident in a lot of instances, and that was the one thing I was told many, many years ago by a mentor of mine, that when you're doing play-by-play and something happens that turns out to be good and memorable, it's usually just by happy accident, if you will. So, hi ho, let's go was one of those things where it seemed appropriate for a first goal of a game by the Saskatoon Blades to say after they scored it. And of course, that comes with it's lyrics from a tune by the Ramones. So, and actually, where I saw it, if truth be told, was it was actually used on a Molson Canadian beer commercials where I remember it first coming up. I don't even remember the Ramones singing it at first. That's where I saw it first, was on a Molson Canadian beer commercial. Then I heard the Ramones on the radio singing and said, "Oh, that's where that comes from."
Well, I know that's kind of what people know you by. Is that saying? Obviously, besides being the voice of the Blades.
Well, yeah, I guess that's the thing about being somebody who's been doing this for as long as I've been doing it, JD, is that people do come to recognize you by certain things that you say. I know there are people up in Prince Albert that know me for entirely different things, and they're not necessarily complimentary. There are a lot of Blade fans who like different sayings. I mean, when the Blades score their second goal of the game, it's "Hey," and so when Kirby Doc or now Colton Doc scores, it seems perfectly normal to say, as Bugs Bunny would have said, "Hey, what's up, Doc?" That sort of a thing. So, I mean, those are the sorts of things that people glom onto, attach themselves to, and I'm happy that I've provided them with some entertainment while doing these games, not just droning on and on endlessly as I can sometimes. It's I've provided. I like to think I've provided entertainment for people, and that's why I've been able to maintain the following that I have.
Yeah, and like you and I've talked before, every WHL broadcaster has their own I guess unique style of calling a game. Like we've talked about, like John Keane, he has that, when they score, he yells, you know, his goal, I guess what was I going to try to say? His goal call is very unique.
Oh, absolutely. I think everybody has a uniqueness to them. You know, the great Danny Gallivan when he did Montreal Canadian games back in the 60s. And there's a guy, 60s and 70s, and there's a guy that I would look at as being one of my broadcast idols. I'm not a Montreal Canadiens fan by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, they're probably my most hated National Hockey League team. But when you grow up and basically all you have is Hockey Night in Canada on Wednesdays and Saturdays, and Danny Gallivan was one of the voices along with Bill Hewitt with doing Maple Leaf games. You tended to follow what those guys did, what they said. And Danny Gallivan was tremendous. His use of the English language and making up words, the spinorama, the cannonading drive, those sorts of things. They're things that I haven't incorporated, but they're things that I know, keep in mind that if you say something that's maybe a little offbeat and different, it's going to add to your style. And Danny Gallivan had a style, and I like to think that Les Lazaruk, if I may be so bold as to use myself in the third person, has a style as well. And whatever that style is, that's up to the public to determine. But I like to think it's one that suits me and fits me, and that people seem to like and appreciate.
Yeah, or even like a guy like Bob Cole.
Yeah. Oh,
Like he's,
absolutely.
with his broadcasting career, he is very unique in his own way. Just like all those guys that do Hockey Night in Canada or on TSN or.
Absolutely. No, they all are. They all, like I say, they all have their different nuances, if you will.
Okay, so I'm going to dive right into. I'm going to start off with asking you what it was like, last year when the Blades, for you and the Blades, what it was like when COVID postponed the season and then canceled it later on.
Well, yeah, I guess it happened. The Blades had played what turned out to be their last game of the 2020 or 1920 season on March the 10th. It was a Tuesday night in Moose Jaw. We traveled after the game to Regina, stayed overnight, traveled the rest of the way into Winnipeg on the Wednesday. And on that Wednesday evening, I had gone over to Frankie's Bar and Grill next door to the hotel where we were staying at. An old radio buddy of mine, Joe Aiello, is one of the owners of that establishment, and sat down and had a chat with him and had a pizza with him. It was great. And we were watching the Winnipeg Edmonton NHL game. Once I was done, it was the end of the second period. I said, I'm going to go watch the rest of the game in my room. Said goodbye, went back to my room, and I'm sitting there watching it. And all of a sudden, the news starts to come in about Rudy Gobert testing positive for COVID-19. Of course, Rudy Gobert with the Utah Jazz and the NBA. And then almost immediately it was the NBA shuts down. The next day, we get up and the Blades go and have a morning practice over at the Rink Hockey Academy in Winnipeg. And all throughout, you could hear the chatter amongst the guys. Geez, you hear what happened to the NBA. Boy, and then while the guys are practicing, we find out that the NHL now has decided they're shutting it down. And you kind of had a sense at that point that if it's going to do that to professional sports, it's definitely going to do that to people like the Western Hockey League, amateur sports, whatever the case may be. And sure enough, later that Thursday afternoon, the word came down from the Western Hockey League that we were done. We couldn't travel the rest of that day, and we'd used up our bus driver time, so we left the next morning. And I remember waking up Friday morning and feeling pretty empty, knowing that today was supposed to be a game day in Winnipeg against the Ice, and it wasn't going to happen. And in fact, we had a 10-hour bus ride ahead of us going back home, and that there was just so much unknown as to what was going to happen. The hope is that we were going to start up again in 2-3 weeks time maybe and finish things off. And of course, that never happened. There was hope that maybe the playoffs could be held. That didn't happen. That got canceled. And as such, everything's sort of been pushed back and back and back and back. You're supposed to start the regular season back in the third weekend of September. That got pushed back to October 2nd. October 2nd got pushed back to December the 4th. December the 4th is now January the 8th. And January the 8th is a hard start date. And so it's going to start regardless of what happens, from what I'm told. I still think that could be changed, but I'm praying, because I'm seeing other people starting, and they seem to be starting okay. The SJHL has started their exhibition season in the last couple of nights. The Prairie Junior League, the Junior B League in Saskatchewan has opened up. AAA midget or under 18 AAA hockey is starting up exhibition games for both females and males. So watching these closely to see how they go, and hopefully it'll translate well, and that the Western Hockey League, at least the East Division, can get started on January the 8th. JD, we're told that there's a very good chance that there's going to be staggered starts to the Western Hockey League, and that the East Division being further along in terms of being able to maintain COVID. And I know the numbers over the last few days, last few weeks, have not been great in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, and yet they're much better than they are in Alberta, BC, and certainly in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. So the hope is that we will be getting going on January the 8th. We'll be able to get started with 7 teams, the 5 Saskatchewan teams and the 2 in Manitoba, and play what I believe will be a 50-game schedule, and then get into playoffs after that sometime in May, and then eventually, hopefully, the all 4 division winners will get together, play a Final Four of some kind somewhere, and end up sending a team off to the Memorial Cup in Oshawa, Ontario in late June.
Well, do you think that, how do you think that's going to be, just, with all the divisions just playing interdivision games? Do you think that's, with all the travel issues and going in, no interprovincial or no out of province travel, do you think that's kind of what, like, the only situation that we could have done with the WHL?
Oh yeah, that's the way it has to be. It is such that there's no sense trying to push the envelope right now when it comes to interprovincial travel. There's too many unknowns. There's too many risks being taken. The idea of keeping a group together for that long overnight for lengthy road trips like we've had in the past. I mean, it was nothing in the past to go into the province of Alberta and play 3 games in 4 days, or to go to the Western Conference, cross the mountains, and play 5 games in 9 days, plus the travel time in order to get out that way and to come back. I mean, a 10, 12-day road trip in the midst of a pandemic in places where the spikes in cases are so great by comparison to what they are here would be really foolish as far as I'm concerned. So we do what we have to do in order to make this happen. Everybody wants to play. There's no two ways about that. We just have to do it in the safest manner possible for everybody involved, be it players, coaches, support staff, office staff, fans, and even a lowly old broadcaster like me. You have to do it as safely as you can for everybody involved. And I'm prepared to do whatever it takes in order to make it happen from my end of things. It's going to mean some different looks and some different ways I do things. But hey, eventually this is going to pass. How long? Hopefully it's only this season. And if it's only this season, then great. Then maybe we get through this, and this is a one-time experience, and we can look back at it in years down the line and say, remember that 2021 season? Wasn't that something? Yeah, that's kind of what I'm hoping we'll be able to do eventually down the road, is say this was a one-off sort of a thing, and that it was an experience that we'll never forget. And
Well,
hopefully a positive one at that.
Oh, totally. Yeah, no, it was definitely hard for, I feel like, those 20-year-olds last year that had to, that weren't able, like teams like any teams that were in a playoff position last night, even for the Blades or the Blazers or the Winterhawks or whoever, all those 20-year-olds, they weren't able to play their last, I would say, few games, and it was tough to see that on my end, at least. Probably the same on yours.
For everybody's end. I mean, I've spoken with all 3 of the Blades 20-year-olds since, and even time months after. We've had the benefit of doing a Blades Uncut podcast. We do now, myself and Mitch Bach, the director of communications. We've spoken with 2 of the 3 20-year-old kids from the Blades from last season, in Scott Walford and Riley McKay, and both mentioned the fact that in the back of their minds, as that bus is traveling from Winnipeg to Saskatoon back on March the 13th, and knowing kind of in the back of their minds that this was probably it, that they weren't going to get the 20-year-old send-off that they've seen other 20-year-olds before them on their various teams get. And that's, and let's face it, in the Western Hockey League, the celebration of the player, no matter how good your team is, you can be the worst team in the league. You can only win 7 games all year, like the Blades did in the 2003-2004 season. And yet those 20-year-olds that are on that team, because they've gone through 4-5 years of playing in the league and have put themselves out on the line day after day, game after game, you want to thank them. You want to give them their just reward for having gone through the gauntlet of play over the course of those years. And Scott Walford, Riley McKay, and Nolan Neen did not get that opportunity, and I'm sure that'll be something that'll be maybe missing from their careers. Hopefully they have careers that overcome that, and that this isn't something that is a blight on it. But I certainly believe that that's something that is missing, and it's too bad. And I'm really hopeful that there's something to be said for the 20-year-olds for this coming season, so that they can play, whether it's a 50 game or a 34 game or however many games it ends up being. But for guys like Chase Waters, Martin Fasco-Rudis, and Caden Daly, who right now stand to be the 3 Blade 20-year-olds starting this season, I hope they get that finish and the send-off that they will so richly deserve.
Yeah, and for the aspect of, did you ever think that the WHL season was going to come back after they originally postponed it, and then they Then they finally canceled it. But before that, did you think that they would bring it back? That the WHL season would continue?
I hoped against hope that it would come back, that we would finish the season. I really thought for a time after the initial shutdown, and it seemed like the curve was flattening a little bit, but unfortunately it was only really flattening in Saskatchewan and Manitoba. So the hope that I had that the playoffs could maybe get going in May was quickly evaporated, because there just was no sign of the virus abating and being under control in the provinces of Alberta, BC, as well as the states of Washington and Oregon in the Pacific Northwest. So if you couldn't have all of them going and playing at the same time, it's a little different than starting this season as they're proposing this time around. If you couldn't finish off with everybody finishing, there was no sense bothering. So they ended up just canceling it. This is a different situation. The idea that the East Division could start January the 8th, and maybe Alberta could start January the 8th, and BC maybe starts February the 8th, and the U.S. Division starts February the 8th or March the 8th or whatever the date ends up being, and plays some sort of a season, but still comes away with being able to declare a division champion after May 2nd. That's the proposed end of the regular season for the East for the league, is that you go into the rest of May and start in with your playoffs and eventually meet the Final Four before heading off to the Memorial Cup in June.
Well, we're just going to take a quick break and commercial break, and then we'll be right back. Yeah, we're just going to sit here for about 3 to 5 seconds, let you take a drink of coffee, and then we'll go right back at it.
No, that's fine, JD.
Okay, and we're back here at the the Sask Sports Show on Amateur Sports TV. I'm joined by Les Lazaruk. It's always hard for me sometimes to pronounce your last name because I want to call it.
Well, you didn't pronounce it right there. It is Lazaruk.
It's Lazaruk.
But that's all right. I've been called a lot worse. Trust me. Back when I was a kid, I'll tell you a quick funny story. My penmanship's terrible. Okay, and my wife's yelling, "Oh yeah," in the background. My penmanship is brutal. It's been brutal ever since the day I started school when I was 6 years old, and that was an eternity ago. But if you can think of a board game called Stratomatic, and there's Stratomatic baseball, there's Stratomatic football. Stratomatic football was only the NFL. My buddies and we put together Stratomatic CFL version, and I wrote to all 9 CFL teams to get statistical information that we could use, and we could then create player cards, etc. We had the formula, we knew what to do, we got it all put together. But with my writing being so poor, I remember getting various different looks of my name on return mail from the various teams. Every team replied. That was the nice thing. Every team replied and sent me stuff that we could use. But the funniest one had to be the Toronto Argonauts, who sent me back my name, Les Lazarilla, Lazarilla, because the ARUK was obviously unintelligible, and they couldn't tell what it was, so they came up with that. I guess I became an Italian instead of Ukrainian at that particular point in time.
Okay, but it is Lazaruk.
That's the one, yes.
Okay, but so where did you grow up?
Winnipeg.
Winnipeg, okay.
Yeah, I was born, raised there. Did all my sports. I was a terrible hockey player. I mean, you have to be able to skate to play hockey, and I was a terrible skater. Great road hockey goalie, but terrible skater. I curled, I golfed, I played basketball, high school basketball. I played baseball. My wife is reminding me that I'm a member of the Manitoba Baseball Hall of Fame. She's very proud of that, the fact that I'm in the Hall of Fame. Probably the only Hall of Fame I'll ever be in, and lucky I played on a pretty good team. Pretty good team that I played on, and with the Elmwood Giants. In fact, there it is right here. Elmwood Giants Hall of Fame, 2006. That's the Manitoba Baseball Hall of Fame. I still have the T-shirt from that. Been there, done that. Have the T-shirt? Yes, I've been there, done that. Have the T-shirt. But yeah, no. So those are the sports I played. I I like to think of myself as a jack of all trades and a master of none. I mean, basically, I tried everything, and I've called everything in the course of time too. I'm known in Saskatoon for being the voice of the Blades and a hockey guy. If you asked friends and media types back in Winnipeg, they'd say, hockey? Crepe, you're known more for baseball and basketball and curling. You've hosted golf coverage on radio. I mean, those were the things that I did more so than hockey in Winnipeg, although I did have 2 seasons doing color commentary next to Kurt Keelback with the Winnipeg Jets in the early 1990s. So, I mean, I like to think of myself as probably primarily a hockey guy, certainly now, but back in the day, I'd like to think I was pretty well-rounded as far as my career went. And so it was Winnipeg. My first radio job was in Brandon, Manitoba. I worked 3 winters there from October of 1980 through 1983, the spring. Joined my boyhood idol radio station, CJOB, in 1983. Worked there until the beginning of 1994. That summer, 94, before I moved to Saskatoon, I was along with Peter Young, who used to do the CFL broadcasts on CTV back in the days when CTV did CFL football. Peter Young and I did the play-by-play of the Winnipeg Goldeyes of the Northern Baseball League. And then I moved to Saskatoon to CJWW Radio, where I have now been for the last 26 years and have been doing Blades hockey for that entire time.
So, growing up in Manitoba, did you know that did you want to be a sports broadcaster? Is that something that you saw yourself being, or did you have a different path?
It was a different path. The different path was I was going to be a writer. I was going to be a sports writer. In fact, when I was in high school, grade 11, we had a journalism, no, sorry, it was grade 12. And it was Journalism 205, it was called, at my high school. And I took the course. And I remember an investigative reporter from CJOB actually came in to speak to our class. And she brought her cassette tape machine that she used when she was out on the beat, and had various people come up if they wanted with a script and read into the thing, and she'd play it back for everybody to hear. So I did that, and I thought that was pretty cool. But I wanted to write. I wanted to be like guys like Ren Davis with the Winnipeg Free Press or Pat Doyle with the Winnipeg Tribune, and follow a team like the Winnipeg Jets or the Winnipeg Blue Bombers on a day-to-day basis. I wanted to be a beat writer. And so when I went to the University of Manitoba, took arts, and because that was the only thing. There wasn't a lot of radio schools or media schools back then. There were a few universities that had journalism programs, but they were far away from Winnipeg and cost a lot, and I really didn't have the wherewithal. So when I went to university, it was designed to be a 3-year course. I got into the university newspaper and started writing. In the first year, I wrote sports for the Manitoban. And then the next year, I was actually the sports editor of the Manitoban. And when we did a spoof edition of the Winnipeg Tribune, which is no longer with us, it folded in 1980. When we did a spoof edition of the Tribune, the people at the Free Press loved it so much that I got hired as a summer intern in the summer of 1979 with the Free Press. So I worked that summer. And the sports editor had said to me, yeah, when summer's done, we'll probably hire you full time. So I didn't bother going back for my 3rd year of university. I'm sitting there in the office one day in September, and the sports editor comes in and he says, hey, Les, how's it going? Good. What are you doing here? I said, well, working away, helping out, getting, the schedule for the next day's paper ready to go. He goes, oh, you're still on internship? I says, yeah. He goes, are you going back to school? I said, oh, you said you would probably be hiring me full time. Yeah, no, that's not going to happen. And it's like, what? He says, well, you're starting to probably be a good idea to, get yourself going, after Christmas and get back into classes. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. I've got the money. I've got some saved up. I guess I can get back. But I was planning on something else. But regardless, anyway, as luck would have it, the Winnipeg Tribune needed somebody in their sports department. I applied, I got the job, I wrote until they folded in August of 1980. And after that, I had to have a career change because nobody wanted a guy with 14 months of writing experience in the newspaper. There were so many good writers out there already that I ended up taking a job in radio and started at CKLQ in Brandon. And luckily, I got a job there and been at it ever since. Been more than 40 years that I've been doing radio broadcasting.
And you were going to school in Brandon to be a writer.
No, school in Winnipeg, University
Oh,
of
school,
Manitoba.
Winnipeg. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, University of Manitoba, and it wasn't really designed to be a writer. That was just a Bachelor of Arts program. The idea was to do 3 years of that, and then to maybe go and take a master's course somewhere like Ryerson or Carleton in Ottawa, or the University of Regina had a journalism school. I didn't know how anxious I was to go to Regina, but I would have gone to one of those three, depending on which one offered me the better opportunity, I guess. And it ended up being a moot point because I got into radio before I was scheduled to go into my 4th year of university.
So how did you get on doing the color commentary for the Winnipeg Jets?
Well, I'm working at CJOB Radio. We had the rights. The broadcast crew was Kurt Keelback, who had been doing the Jets games since 1979. And because we had just gotten the rights back, CJOB is an iconic information station, radio station in Winnipeg. It's been doing news and sports programming for as long as I can remember, back to when I was a small child back in the 60s. And if you wanted to know what was going on in the world of news and sports in Winnipeg on the radio right now, CJOB was the place to go to. And that's where my radio was tuned a lot of the time. They had the Winnipeg Jets rights. They did the WHA games of the Jets. They had the Blue Bombers games in the CFL. And anything else that went on that they figured was worthy of doing. So the idea of CJOB losing the rights to both the Jets and the Blue Bombers in the 80s, which is when I got my job. So for the first few years, they didn't have the rights when I was there. When we got the rights back, Kurt Keelback comes over with the Jets. We add Don Whitman, the late Don Whitman, a great broadcaster from CBC days, to do color, except Don was always busy with CBC stuff. He was a contract employee of theirs. And in the 1991-92 season, when the first year we got the Jets rights back, he was so busy getting ready with different Olympic events for the Albertville Winter Olympics that he was away a lot. So when he was away, I got to do the color with Kurt. And luckily, I was able to see a lot of the world, see a lot of the National Hockey League, see a lot of the old buildings, Maple Leaf Gardens, not the Air Canada Centre, the Montreal Forum, not the Bell Centre, the Boston Garden, not, and you get the idea. I've seen a lot of the older buildings in the NHL, the Chicago Stadium, not the United Center, iconic old buildings, great places. And I'm glad I got a chance to see all those because the memories come flooding back when I think of those things. But that was my 2 years of getting to do color with the Winnipeg Jets in the NHL from 1991 through 93.
Well, and after you did the color for the Jets, was that did you find a passion for it? Like it's something you wanted to continue in life?
The passion was there before that because I'd done play-by-play. 1982-83, when we were denied the rights to do the Brandon Wheat King games at CKLQ in Brandon, what we did, we decided to give it back to the Wheat Kings and to the opposition because they had done a little dirty pool in our minds to get the rights away from us. We did Brandon University sports. So every weekend that winter in the 82-83 season, I was either doing Brandon University men's hockey or Bobcats men's and women's basketball. And so, again, traveled all over the place. They had very good teams. I went to basketball nationals in Waterloo, Ontario. I went to hockey nationals in Moncton, New Brunswick. We traveled with the men's basketball team down to the University of South Dakota and played games there, and some incredible stories of human interest type stories besides the games and the sports. I learned so much about life and about how people are and the attitudes of people. Incredible how some of the stereotypes that still exist today, I found out about on some of those trips. And it just, it makes me shake my head back then. And it still makes me shake my head today that those sorts of things happened in places and they still resonate today. When you take a look at what's going on in the world, it just makes you go, are we really still stuck with some of our stereotypes and our stupidities? Yes, we are, unfortunately. And hopefully, come November 3rd, there will be a change south of the border that maybe we'll be able to get somebody in that can actually get us going in the right direction.
So you moved to Saskatoon to take a job at CJWW.
Correct.
With that job, did that include doing the Blades broadcast as well? Okay.
That was the big deal, JD, was the fact that when I was out of work early in 1994, and while I was doing Gold Eyes baseball in Winnipeg, the radio station here in Saskatoon at CJWW had decided that they were going to purchase from receivership the old CFQC AM and turn it into an FM station. CFQC at the time had done the Blades games for many, many years. So a fellow that was the sales manager at CJWW at the time had been our sales manager at CJOB just before that. And when I phoned him up and said, "What are you guys doing with Blades hockey?" "Well, we're going to do it." "Do you know who's going to do the play-by-play for you?" "Well, no, we haven't thought that far ahead." "Well, pick me. I'm in if you want. I'd love to do that sort of a thing." We go drive down, my wife and I, we come to Saskatoon. She has family here, so we had a start of a social circle right away, friends and family she had. So it made it easy to consider taking the job. And as a result, when I meet up with the sales manager and then the station general manager, I was able to convince them that, I was the guy for the job, and they hired me. And so, bang, September 1st of 1994, we moved to Saskatoon. We get set up and start going to work in the news and sports department at CJWW. But the main thing for me was being the voice of the Blades, because they had been a phenomenal franchise for the years before that. They were the finalists in the WHL in 1992 and 94, and they had a very good team going into 94, 95. And I was excited for the opportunity to finally follow a team on a day-to-day basis and call their games and be that guy behind the microphone, just like, again, another one of my broadcast idols, Ken Nicholson, who had been the voice of the Winnipeg Jets, that I would sit there with my transistor radio, putting my earpiece into my ear while I'm supposed to be sleeping at night, but listening to a Jets game back in the 1970s.
Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back.
I did. Oh, that's coming.
Oh. Okay, and we're back here with the Sask Sports Show, brought to you by Amateur Sports TV, with Les Lazaruk.
Nope.
No, Lazaruk. Oh my gosh. I even had to think about it too, and I still got it wrong.
Take two.
Okay. And we're back with the Sask Sports Show, brought to you by Amateur Sports TV, with Les Lazaruk.
Hey.
There we go.
That's the
ticket. Okay, so September of 1994 was your first. Would it be your first WHL game that you've called?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. First game that I called as play-by-play. Now, again, being in Brandon at CKLQ and not being the rights holders of the Wheat Kings, I'd still go to games and I'd still cover those games as far for the radio station and report on them. But teams would come in from out of town. They'd bring their broadcast crew. And as is the case still today in a lot of instances, if the play-by-play guy feels that there's somebody there that he can rely on to do it, you'll be asked to do color commentary for them. So actually, I did color for several different Western Hockey League broadcasts in Brandon during my time between 1980 and 83. So including Roger Millions with CFQC in Saskatoon back in the day. So, those did a lot of that. But my first WHL play-by-play was in September of 1994, yes.
And how was that? How was the experience of your first ever doing the play-by-play, calling the game? What was it like?
Game number one was one to remember, if I may be so allowed a story here. My life is a series of crazy, nutty stories that have happened along the line when it comes to my professional life. But first game was supposed to be in Regina on a Wednesday evening, and we drive down. Now, again, we've taken over the rights. CJWW has taken over the rights from CFQC, who no longer exist. They're about to become an FM station under our umbrella. We get their old radio equipment, so it's something that I have to set up and everything else. The equipment, our engineer grabs it, has a look at it, cleans it all up, tests it. It tests fine. He says, okay, here's how it works. Here's how you put it all together. He shows me. I do it. Everything works beautifully. I've got the kit with me. We're on the bus heading to Regina. We get to Regina. I get up into the press box at the Agrodome, as it was known back then, set everything up, and there's no power. I've got everything plugged in properly. There's no power. Luckily, it's game number 1. And so the engineer for CKRM radio in Regina is with the Pats broadcaster, making sure he's set and ready to go to start the season. He sees that I'm having an issue, checks, does everything, realizes, yeah, your setup is toast. Probably, this is an old unit, probably have to get rid of this. He then says, I'll look after you. He runs back to the radio station at CKRM in Regina, comes back with equipment. Now, the game was a 7:30 start. I was supposed to be on the air at 7:15. That didn't happen. We weren't on the air at 7:15 for a 3-game show. We weren't on the air at 7:30 for the start of the game. Heck, we weren't on the air to start the second period of my first game in Regina. He comes back, he sets it all up, and I get on the air finally. There's about 5 minutes left to go in the second period. And the game was pretty much over at that point in time. The Blades were already up 5-1. So, I mean, for all intents and purposes, it was game over. It's like, oh, hi. Yeah, I'm your new radio guy doing the play-by-play here for the Blades. And yeah, we've had some technical issues, but we're on the air now. And, well, you'll be happy to know that the Blades have been kicking butt throughout this game so far and lead the Pats 5-1 and carried on. And that's the way that one went. And there have been times where we've had, phone line failures in buildings. We've had issues with forgetting the equipment, and not necessarily me forgetting the equipment, but our bus driver, said he was going to put it on the bus and didn't, and we came back and there it was sitting exactly where I had put it down for him to put. The one time that I totally forgot to take it with me on the road and ended up having to call back and have somebody who was following to bring it along so that I could do it. We've hit wildlife, deer, moose, even. We've had all kinds of issues along the line. Fog. We've had snowstorms. We've had to go back and be storm stayed all over the place. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. And then the other one I'm just being reminded of on the U.S. trip, we're traveling along and we made a big, huge sweeping curve, and all of a sudden we hear a thumping outside the bus, and there's the equipment case that had come out of the cargo hold, bouncing down the I-5 highway in Washington State. It's like, yeah, we've had lots of adventures along the line, to be sure. But game number 1, hi, I'm the new guy, and it'd be like people are probably thinking to themselves at home, who is this guy? Is this what we're in for now? From now on, we've got this championship caliber team, and we've got this go ahead as a broadcaster. Well, I think I managed to redeem myself after a while. I'd like to think, but yeah, it was night 1 was one to remember for sure.
I can't believe that was the first game, because I was reading the article that the WHL wrote about when they honored you for your 1,500 game.
Oh, yeah.
That it was, I didn't realize that was game 1.
Yeah, that's game 1. That was game 1. Yeah, that was something. I mean, you come home and you're sitting there thinking to yourself, wow, did I make the right choice here? Like, what the heck am I doing? Well, no, I knew I made the right choice. And the next game was a home game. It was the home opener. It was a lot of pomp and ceremony. And it was great. I really got into it at that point in time. So.
Well, that season, how was that season for you? Your first official season in the WHL? Because they actually had a pretty good season that year. They ended 41-23-8,
Yep, something like that.
making
Yeah,
the playoffs.
yeah, they were third place in the East Division. They beat Swift Current in 6 games in the first round, lost in the second round to Prince Albert in 4 straight. Been a lot of 4 straight exits in playoffs in my time, unfortunately. Some people would like to think that maybe I'm a jinx in that respect. I say no, as just the way it goes. It has absolutely nothing to do with me up in the broadcast booth. I'm too far away, and I have absolutely nothing to do with how things go on the ice. But if that's what floats your boat, thinking that I'm a jinx, yeah, go right ahead and believe that. Um, but that first year, I learned a lot, and I had some really great people to help me out in that respect. And I think of Daryl Lubinecki, the general manager. I think of Lauren Mulliken, who was in his final season of his first run with the Blades. He ended up coming back and being GM and head coach again with the team in 2004. But that first year of mine, he was the head coach. Assistant coaches and they were volunteer assistant coaches like Jerome Engel and Dave Chartier. And then and back then there was only one trainer, equipment manager. He was everything, and that's Blaine White. Those guys were phenomenal helps to me along the line. Of course, along with the team owner, the Brodsky family, Jack and Bob Brodsky, were phenomenal people and big helps to me as I muddled my way through season one of 1994-95.
So you've called 1,500 games for the Saskatoon Blades over a course of 25 years. Is there one game or moment that you remember the most?
Well, I'll update the number because it's going to be closer to 2000. I'm, if we get started January the 8th, and I will throw if in there. I know the league is saying they're going to get started on January the 8th, come HE double hockey sticks or high water. Um, I'm over 1,900 games. If they play 50 games and we get a playoff run, I will hit 2,000 Saskatoon Blades games called in my career in the playoffs, possibly. It may not be until the 2021-22 season, but whatever. It's going to happen at some point in time, and I'm going to be very humbled to have gotten that far in my career, being able to broadcast 2,000 Blades games. This is season 27 coming up for me. The most memorable game would be the 2013 Memorial Cup at SaskTel Center, where the Blades beat the eventual champion Halifax Mooseheads 5-2 during the round robin. It was the Blades' only win of that Memorial Cup tournament, but it was over the eventual champions and a team that had Nathan McKinnon on it, along with Jonathan Drouin. It was a stacked team. It only lost 8 or 9 games in regulation time all year in the Quebec Major Junior League, and that ended up being their only loss in that Memorial Cup tournament. But the Blades that night, or that actually was a Sunday afternoon. That Sunday afternoon were clearly the better team and played like I probably had never seen a Blades team play in a big setting before. I mean, I've seen Blades teams kick butt all over the place. I mean, I remember a 12-6 game not that long ago. They won in Swift Current, where it seemed like everything they shot went in the net. And Frank Banham scoring 83 goals one year in 95, 96, and it seemed like everything he shot found the net. And there were some great games and great moments in regular season and playoff history. But when you're on the biggest stage and you win a game on the biggest stage against the best team, that to me is the highlight game, the greatest game that I have seen the Blades play in my time calling them.
And how was like the atmosphere in Saskatoon being able to host a Memorial Cup, and also for the Blades too? What was that like for them?
It was one where, honest truth, I really thought that the Blades should have hosted the Memorial Cup 3 years earlier in 2010. To me, their team was better suited to host in 2010. They decided not to host because Saskatoon ended up hosting the World Junior Hockey Championships in December 2009, January 2010. And the owner of the Blades, part owner, member of the family ownership group, Jack Brodsky, was the co-chair of the World Juniors. And he made the decision that rather than bid for the 2010 Memorial Cup and host the World Juniors. He didn't think that we could, in Saskatoon, capably host both. I would respectively have disagreed. I disagreed back then. I still do disagree today. But that was Jack's decision, not mine. He made the decision, and we had the World Juniors, and it was a wildly successful World Juniors. I was here for 2 days of it, and then had to take off at the Blades on the U.S. road trip because, well, we couldn't play any games at SaskTel Center during the tournament, so we had to be out of town. That 2010 team, 9-10 team, was really good. And had they been the hosts, I think you would have seen Braden Holtby come back for his 20-year-old season to play goal. They had Derek Kulak as captain. It would have been a tremendous team that I think would have done some severe damage in the league and possibly in the Memorial Cup as well. The 2013 team, when the bid was put forth, I remember people within the organization telling me, we don't have the group good enough to play and compete and be a success. We're going to have to really make a lot of trades, a lot of moves in order to get better, in order to be competitive, which is what ended up happening. We got the rights to host and got off to a horrific start. The Blades were in last place in the East Division in November. And there were a lot of people around, not just the Western Hockey League, around Canada, around the entire CHL, saying they got to take that hosting away from them because they're going to make, fools of themselves if they continue on this way. But of course, Lauren Mulliken stayed the course. The league decided to stick with the Blades, made all kinds of moves. As I said, they were going to have to, and they did, and they got some great players and went on an 18-game winning streak from near the end of January to early stages of March. Got not just out of last place in the East Division, but rose all the way to first place and got into the playoffs. But as has been, unfortunately, the way it's been for the Blades organization and franchise over the years, they got to round one of the playoffs and ran into a very hot goaltender in Cam Lanigan with the Medicine Hat Tigers and got punted out of the first round in 4 straight games. So now you got 6 weeks to wait around until your first game in the Memorial Cup. And because of that, it was really a roller coaster ride for the fans in Saskatoon that year. There was that low at the beginning. Well, they weren't doing very well. It's like, wow, why did we buy our tickets to go to a Memorial Cup? And, we ended up averaging 6,000 a game that year. And a lot of that was due to the fact that the team, when they got going in the second half, and won those 18 straight games, the city caught fire with them and got into the playoffs. And then when they lost in 4 straight, it was just, again, such a huge letdown. And the atmosphere and the whole attitude towards the team was, well, we've done it again. We've gotten to a point, and now you've let us down. And unfortunately for a lot of people in this town and in this area, that has been the history of the franchise. You've let us down again. And it's too bad because there's been so many great people, so many great players, and coaches and people. I mean, all you have to do is take a look at the National Hockey League and look through history, and you see how many great people have come through. But what is lacking is that one big thing that everybody likes to rattle your cage about, the lack of a championship. Nothing would make this city and this franchise happier than to get that championship. But in 2013, they came back from the Memorial Cup. There wasn't a lot of hope for them. But then again, they beat Halifax, I should say, in game 2 after losing by 1 goal to London in the first game. And suddenly there they are, ready to play Portland in their final round-robin game with a chance that if they win that game, they're directly into the final again, just like in 1989 when the Blades went all the way to the Memorial Cup final while hosting and then lost in the overtime to the Swift Current Broncos on the Tim Tisdale goal. And then there they were, 1 goal down going into the third period against Portland, but couldn't finish it off, couldn't make the comeback, couldn't win the game. Ended up playing the tiebreaker game, lost that one to London, and that was the end of the season. It was disappointment again. But the roller coaster ride of that year for everybody involved, for fans especially, for yours truly, for the players, for the management, for the coaching staff, it was quite the ride, and one again that I will never forget. Maybe not for all the right reasons, but there were a lot of right reasons, along with some not so good ones, unfortunately.
Well, no, I imagine that would just be a cool experience just to be there.
Yeah, it was cool. Very cool. Actually, I do remember the '89 Memorial Cup. I was here for that for a few games. A few of us from Winnipeg came out because, well, the Jets are kind of like the Blades, mirror that in a lot of respects. They haven't had a lot of success as a franchise, so here we were. You know, playoffs are done, season's done for the Jets. It's May, late May in '89, and we decided to take a week to go out to Saskatoon and watch some Memorial Cup games because it was pretty close. So we saw that. Been to Regina a couple of times for Memorial Cups since the Pats have been hosting. The Memorial Cup is something else, but it's best if you are a champion of your league and you go on to play in it as a champion of your league. And it's the one thing that I would really love to see happen one day for the Blades franchise with me doing the play-by-play is for them to win the Western Hockey League title and go to a Memorial Cup and experience that as a visitor and see what it's all about somewhere else.
Well, they were close. What was that? 2 years ago, with they take.
Yep, 2 years ago, the 17-18 season, or sorry, 18-19 season, it was with Kirby Doc, of course, and just a group that won 45 games in Mitch Love's first year as head coach, and some shrewd trades by Colin Priestner to cobble together, a real good team with solid goaltending, an exceptional defense, goal scoring that could happen almost at a whim. The only problem was they were in the wrong division that year because they ended up in the same division with the best team in the league, the Prince Albert Raiders, whom they lost out to in the second round. And of course, the Raiders went on to win the title and go on to the Memorial Cup instead of the Blades. But that playoff series will always stick in my mind as one that the Prince Albert fans thought they were going to have their way with the Blades. They were going to mop the floor with them, so to speak. We kick them out in 4 straight games. But when that series was tied at 2-2 after 4 games, there was a little bit of fear there. And they can say all they want, but there was no fear. There was fear. Trust me. They knew they were in for a series, and the Blades gave them everything they had in games 5 and 6. Unfortunately, that was the end of it. But that was a great run. That was a great time. Great time to be a part of following the group.
Well, we're gonna take a short commercial break, and we'll be right back. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this interview as much as I have, because this is.
Oh yeah, that's good. That's good. Is this the last segment then?
Yes. Yeah, we're almost done.
Okay, good.
And we're back with the Sask Sports Show, brought to you by Amateur Sports TV. So Les, before the break, we talked about that playoff series between the Raiders a couple years ago. And I remember watching it, being at home, watching that series, and holy geez, was that a series. Because I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, most of those games were a pretty low scoring game, gone into overtime. And I imagine it was the same for you being there. It was just exciting.
Yeah, they were low scoring for the most part. The games in Prince Albert, the Blades had a tough guy at time in that rink. The Art Hauser Center is an entity onto itself, and when they have a good team, the fans are very much a part of the game because they're pretty much right on top of you, and it's difficult. They make it difficult, and the team plays a style in that building. Kirby Doc will say they play differently at home than they do on the road, and it's true. They play to their building, and if they can have a good home record and get home ice advantage, they become very difficult to beat, and that's the way it was in the 18-19 season for the Raiders. On the road, they were pretty human. They could be beaten, and the Blades, were able to win 2 of the 3 games at SaskTel Center in that playoff series by being at home and doing a good job. But yeah, that series was great hockey for the time. It lacks some of the intensity of years ago. There are people who are longtime fans that remember when the Raiders came to be in 1983 in the Western Hockey League, and the Saskatoon Prince Albert rivalry was born. And let's face it, hockey today is played so much differently, with the emphasis on the skill and the speed. But when you're dealing with prairie folk and blue collar types, they love that physical brand of hockey, and that's what you got. It was essentially, dare I say, a war back in the 80s and 90s with those teams, And that's what a lot of the fans around here still clamor for, but it's never going to happen again. It's not the way it is. It's not the way the National Hockey League is. It's not what the scouts come out to see anymore. They don't want to see the brawling and the scrapping. They want to see whether you can skate and score and handle the puck, and whether you can play good defense, whether you can defend, whether you've got the physical capabilities to move your opponent away from where he wants to go and where you want him to be, and whether your goaltender is athletic enough to make the stops that are necessary, to make the big saves when needed. So it's a different game altogether. So as far as the modern day type of hockey, that 18-19 series was as good as it's gotten, as far as I'm concerned, between the Blades and the Raiders. And any games between these two franchises from now on will always be measured up now against those 6 from back in April of 2019.
So would you say that the Blades Raiders rivalry is bigger than, the Blades against the Pats?
I would say now it is, yeah. There was a time there not too long ago where it seemed like neither the Blades or Raiders were good at the same time. They was either one was good and the other one not so good, or vice versa, or they both weren't very good, and that didn't make for much in terms of a rivalry, because what were you playing for? Just to prove that you were better off. Although I always maintain that for for Prince Albert folks, their team could go 4-64 in a season. So long as those 4 wins are over the Blades at the Art Hauser Center in PA, then it's a successful season as far as they're concerned. That they just live for that in Prince Albert, is the ability to say we beat Saskatoon at home. That's all they care about. But as far as the rivalry, Regina Saskatoon rivalry was really good there for quite a while, and they met in the playoffs more often than what the Blades and Raiders did. So I think there was, until the last few years, it had been Saskatoon Regina, but now it's definitely Saskatoon Prince Albert again.
So I had Rod Peterson on my show a couple of weeks ago, and he was telling me about some interesting incidents happening at opposing teams' rinks. Being the broadcaster, he at Swift Current, the guys would bang on the announcer booth because it was made of plywood. And then he had another instance in Seattle where they were throwing things at, I think it was Seattle. Yeah, it was Seattle. Throwing things on the ice or at their players. Has anything like that happened to you in an opposing team's rink?
No. Rod, let's call a spade here. Rod likes to be kind of in the middle of things like that, and he brings that upon himself by what he'll say from time to time. I mean, I guess the closest I've had was 2 years ago in that series against PA, where I kind of let rip after Game 4 when the series was tied up at 2-2, and I said something that kind of got a few Raider fans going. But compared to what, I mean, the fact that Rod would actually put Vaseline on the bottom of the booth in Swift Current to upset the fans that would be banging away on the bottom of the booth whenever the Broncos would score, because that annoyed him so much. Yeah, okay, that's fine. The banging on the bottom of the booth in Swift Current has never bothered me. That's their fans doing what they do. It doesn't disrupt what I'm trying to do, so it's no big deal to me. And then there's been things like that in other rinks too. But I'm just the broadcaster. I'm not trying to get into the middle of the rivalry to the point where I'm a part of it, where I'm taking away from it. I just don't feel like that's my spot to do it, and it's not my personality to do it for the most part. So I've never really noticed any great issues with fans coming after me or any such thing like that.
Well, and I just want to talk about, so on February, I think it was February 15th, 2014, you called your 1500 game in a 4-1 win over the Red Deer Rebels. What was it like? What kind of ceremony? Explain to me the ceremony that they had for you back at the SaskTel Center to kind of honor you for your 1500 game.
Well, they had my wife with me and my station manager, and of course the ownership of the team, and they brought out the red carpet, out the center ice, and they gave me a sweater, and they They gave me a little plaque, and I dropped the puck. They introduced me on the ice, and it was cool. I got a nice ovation. That was nice. I mean, I appreciate how people feel about me in the town and what I do and what I try to do. My feeling is that I'm only trying to do my job to the best of my ability, and to the best of my ability means to do it in the most professional manner that I possibly can, and to the best of my ability. It, that doesn't change on a day-to-day basis. That's the idea, is to be as prepared as I can be, so I can do the best that I can do, and do it as accurately and as positively as I can too. I'm not going to snow the people with what's going on if the Blades aren't playing well. I was always told from long, long ago that when the team plays well, you say they play well. When they're not playing well, you say they aren't playing well. Be, truthful to your fans. Don't try and, feed them a load of garbage. That isn't the case, because they'll figure it out. They start coming to the rink, and they see what the team is doing, and they'll go, "What are you talking about? I'm not going to listen to you. You're lying to us. You're not telling us the whole truth about what's going on with this team." So the idea is that you try and be as accurate as you can be in your description, whether it be good, great, not so good, not good at all sometimes. And unfortunately, there have been times where it hasn't been good at all, but I'm happy to say there have been much more times where it's been really good than it has been not so good.
And did you ever think you would get from your first day back in your first game back in 1994? Did you ever think you would get to 1,500 games back in 2014?
No. I thought I might have been doing something else, been somewhere else even. I mean, there have been opportunities to move, um, but I never took them, because in cases the moves were, at worst, at the best, I should say, a lateral move from what I had done in the past. And I didn't want to have a lateral move, or a move that was not allowing me to do what I wanted to do. If I was going to make a move, it was going to be to the National Hockey League to do play by play. That opportunity, unfortunately, has never come, and it probably won't come now. I'd love it to come, but I don't think it is. And I'm actually quite satisfied where I am here in Saskatoon. We love it here. My wife and I are very, very comfortable in Saskatoon. And so, as long as the Saskatoon Media Group, my employers, and the Blades like what I do, I intend on continuing to do this for as long as I can. I just enjoy it. It's my passion. It keeps me going in the wintertime. When it's dreary and cold out, I know that at the end of the day, or at the end of a weekend, or whatever the case may be, there is going to be that game there for me to do, that is going to get my motor going, and I'm going to want to be revved up and ready to go and do the prep work necessary to do the best job that I possibly can again. So to get to 1,500, to almost 2,000 games, yeah, I didn't think I'd get there, but I'm happy I have, and I hope to go on for as long as I possibly can, as long as the good Lord allows me to do so.
Okay, to finish off, with all your experience, what advice would you give to a young broadcaster trying to get into sports broadcasting?
Don't shoot too high. Take your opportunities where you get them, and do the schooling yourself, JD. I know that you've been taking a course at Western Academy of Broadcasting, whether it's WABC, whether it's SAIT or NAIT or Red River Community College in Winnipeg, or wherever it is. If you want to get into this business, get your schooling certificate. Then don't look to start at TSN or Sportsnet immediately. You have to start in the trenches, in the smaller locations, and get the opportunity to do sports broadcast. And not just sports broadcasting. Try everything, because you may find out down the line that, geez, maybe writing commercials is more fun, or maybe sales is more fun, or maybe being in news or being on air, being an announcer is more fun, or you may find that just doing a talk show on a podcast might be more fun. But if you do get the opportunity to work in a radio or TV station that has play-by-play rights, great. But in order to get there, you have to have some experience behind your name, and usually you get those starts in the smaller towns, in places like Whitecourt, Alberta, like Rosetown, Saskatchewan, like Winkler, Manitoba, those sorts of places, Dauphin, Manitoba, all those different little towns that have teams that have radio stations in which you're doing play-by-play of Junior A hockey or Junior B or Western Hockey League, whatever the case may be. Do those things first before you try to make it. I mean, if you have if you have the connection with somebody in the big time who can get you there a lot quicker, great, good for you. I didn't have that opportunity. I had to work at it. And the large majority of people have to do it that way. So my thought is get your diploma, go through the smaller towns, work at your trade, improve your trade, and then you're ready to make the move up to the bigger time.
Well, it seems like you working very hard at your craft has really sure paid off, with being with the Blades for over 25 years. So, congratulations to you, and congratulations to you on your 1500 game, and also, going to be your 2000th game, hopefully this year, maybe next year as well.
Hopefully. Thank you so much. It's very kind of you, JD, and thank you for the time here today.
Yeah, thank you, Les, and I appreciate you being on the show. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and good luck to you and the Saskatoon Blades on the upcoming season.
Thank you very much. Yes, all the best to you and the Amateur Sports TV show.
Thank you very much, Les. Have a great day.
You too.